DZ and Tim Hauraney here with you down at the Canadian Grand Prix. Tim, let's talk Ferrari. Obviously, with how well McLaren's been doing this season, every single other team in the paddock is just competing for second place in that constructors standing, and that's exactly where Ferrari finds itself so far. But let's start with Lewis. That's obviously the major addition to this team this year, and things haven't really gone all that, according to plan, let's just say. He would have said it in a little bit of a different way. It felt quite melodramatic after Spain. But when you take a look at it, he's just 23 points behind Charles. There's still plenty of season left, but what have you made of his 2025 so far?
Obviously, I think coming into this one, it was going to be a challenge for him. I don't think that he even thought that it was going to be easy coming into this. There were so many different layers to what he had to learn, what he had to go through to make himself feel comfortable within the team. He'd been at Mercedes for just so many years that switching that environment is not an easy thing to do for a racing driver, simply because, again, of who you're working with and how do they communicate, not English and Italian, but how do they communicate when it comes to the technical feedback? Teams do things differently that way. Every team does down this whole paddock. So that's another sort of layer to that learning process they would have had to undertake. I thought that this car obviously was going to be better, and we can talk about that in a couple minutes, but I thought this car was going to be a lot better, which would make his transition easier. But since the car has been a bit of a struggle, I think it's made his transition a lot harder, simply because of trying to understand what type of a setup does he want on the race car for the entire weekend. We've seen him do experiments throughout different race weekends where he's tried different setup here, different setup there, and he's been encouraged by the team to maybe start looking at what Charles Leclerc is doing with his setups. And so I think we'll start to see Lewis curve more in that direction, maybe start to see a little bit more of what Charles does with the setup on his car, and may start implementing some of those things onto his car. And I think we'll see him eventually smooth it out. But I'll also note that this 2022 regulation with this car has been a challenge for him, not only with Mercedes, but also we're seeing it with Ferrari. And if this were 2020, we were discussing this off camera, but if this was 2020, that's a different type of a car. It's a different regulation. It's a different driving style. So I think for Lewis, it's having to try and find a way with the setup to get him close to that feel of a race car.
Obviously, one of the biggest allures to Lewis joining Ferrari, it's not just wearing the racing red there, but it was also the fact that he wanted to take advantage of the momentum that they seemed to have at the end of last year, where the car looked like it was certainly number 2 on the grid, but also the 2026 regulations and how strong they would perform in that regard too. It's a 2-year project, it's a 2-year contract, but do you kind of think that's it just there for Lewis? Do you think it's just 2 years that he's eyeing there at Ferrari?
We'll have to wait and see, I think, how 2026 goes first before I think he decides what he wants to do, because it could come down to the fact that, hey, we get into 2026 and maybe the Ferrari is not as competitive as, let's say, Mercedes or maybe even Aston Martin, but it's right there. Like they're hanging around. And maybe that would encourage him to sign up for another year plus an option to then see where this goes. Obviously, he's in search of his 8th world championship. There's no question about it. And I think he's really hungry to get that. I think when he sees what the 2026 regulation is like, not such from the power unit side, but more from the technical regulation, how that car is, how is it to drive? Is it something similar to what we have now, a similar type of a feel, really heavy, really stiff? Then I think we'll see whether or not he'll want to stick around and see out a bit more of that new regulation that's coming in.
Obviously, from a news perspective, Charles has been a little bit overshadowed by Lewis. All the news has mostly been about him, but As far as popularity goes, you're certainly not going to overshadow him. We were just walking downtown in Montreal yesterday outside the Ritz. We saw all these fans waiting. Almost got trampled when he made his way home in his car.
He's a popular guy here.
He's a popular guy.
Charles is very popular.
He's a very popular
guy.
and
Canada, I should
he's
say.
very popular in the team, obviously, as well. We know how much Ferrari loves Charles, but what have you made of his season so far? Because obviously he's got the most points in the team, but as far as taking the steps that maybe you thought you would see, as now he's getting challenged by a 7-time driver or world driver champion.
Yeah,
So,
I think.
what do you make of those adjustments?
I think Z coming into this season, and we'll get to talk to him about this more later today, but I think it was that knowing that Lewis is coming to the team and knowing that you're going to be paired up with like an incredible talent in Lewis Hamilton, and thinking as a driver, like, okay, like how do I make that next step in the evolution of my driving? I think we're seeing that from Charles Leclerc this season. The car is not an easy one to drive. By the looks of things, it's very difficult to get into the right setup window where both drivers can extract the performance from the car and also the tire as well. I think for Leclerc, this is the best I think I've seen him driving in the races. Like, there's no question that he's probably the best qualifier up and down this paddock. I think he is the quickest over one lap. But it's that race pace. It's that carving your way through a Grand Prix and understanding the ups, the downs with it, and controlling all of that. I think for Charles, he's sort of taken that next step in that evolution as a driver, and you can really see it with a lot of his drives. I mean, Monaco, for instance, that car had no business being where it was in Monaco. It really didn't. I mean, the car right now being second in the constructors for me is surprising. I really don't think that's a second best car on the grid. I really don't. I think that's Charles Leclerc, driving at such a high level, and then Lewis Hamilton coming in and really accompanying that.
To go off your point there, where you don't see the Ferrari as the second best car on the grid, no matter what the constructor standings currently say thus far, they most certainly earned that spot last year to end this season, and really fighting it out even on that last race to earn that spot. As we mentioned, it's a big part of why Lewis wanted to go there, because the car looked like it was going to be strong this year. It's not how it's turned out. Why do you think that? What do you think has happened here with this Ferrari design where they've been struggling, even though, again, struggling currently in second in that?
Yeah, no, I think making, and this is a very technical answer, but
go technical, Tim. That is exactly
we want you
what
to go
these chats
technical
are
as
for.
possible.
Please do.
I think making the adjustments to what they did with the front suspension, i.e. going with either push rod, pull rod suspension, and which way should we go, and then making that decision, instead of sticking with what they had last year and years prior, was a bit of a misstep, I think. Now, they probably wouldn't come out and say that or acknowledge it, because then you're giving secrets away and details, but I think that has something to do with it. I really do. And I think that, in a way, it affects where they can run their race car in terms of ride height, because we saw what happened to Lewis in China, getting disqualified for having too much plank wear. I mean, that is a call out to where are they running the car as well. Now, whether that has anything to do with flexible front wings at that time, and also maybe different suspension components they were playing with underneath the cowling and engine cover and nose box, like that remains to be seen. But I think they've definitely gone in a direction that they probably shouldn't have in the off season with the development of this car.
Well, okay. Well, speaking of, again, upgrades and things that they've done to the car, what they added to the car for the Spanish Grand Prix was meant to really kind of excite the Tifosi, and it did. They got some good results there in Spain. It did seem like they took a bit of a step forward, but we're at a different track here. How do you think that's going to translate for Ferrari at the Canadian Grand Prix? How do you think they're going to fare this weekend as far as with the car specifically?
Yeah, I think bringing up updates to the car in Imola and seeing where it was there a little bit, you do need to sort of ride the curbs in Imola. You do need to do some curb striking. It is something similar to what the drivers have to do here in Canada, Here is a lot more aggressive and repetitive. Looking at Monaco and hearing from Charles and having watched a lot of onboard camera, the car looks really compliant when they do run the car over curbs, curb riding, not necessarily curb striking. And so I think for this weekend in Canada, this could be a potential for Ferrari to score some really strong points, maybe a podium, maybe even, I mean, if the weather stays cool enough, I mean, heck, maybe even a win. Like, I think they're in that ballpark here with this particular track and this car. And obviously, I think they want some redemption from last season here in Canada. I mean, it was a bit of a disaster here for them last year. So I think obviously they're going to want to rebound from that as well.
Yeah, well, as we've already discussed before, obviously Lewis Hamilton's very first win in Formula One came here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. If he does manage to do that with Ferrari this weekend, well, he'll also be the all-time leader in wins here with 8.